kind of introduce a little bit about your history. You know, you've done so many different things, and just kind of talk about just kind of your background.
So my real name is Terry Carr, as you guys already know. Cebo is a family nickname that came about. My brother, my third oldest brother and I, my mom would send us out the house together, and we had to stay together, so we were always together. And so, like a freaking frat type of thing, he became Cebo and I was Cebo. So it was Cebo type situation. When I started dancing in the club scene, there was another dancer by the name of Terry. So whenever the conversation would go about, it's like, "Yo, did you see Terry last night?" And we both just happened to dance well. So it was always like, "Which Terry are you talking about?"
This is Brooklyn Terry?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Which Terry are you talking about? It didn't help that we both had dreads. You know, we both danced the same style at that time. So it was just like, you know, and I just used Cebo, and he became Brooklyn Terry. That differentiated that. I won my first street dance battle, b-boying in the Bronx, 1982. I was 5, and I just kept doing it. I never stopped. I just kept doing it. I went through all the phases that it went through. When b-boying became whack and hip-hop came in, I started doing hip-hop. When hip-hop got whack and house came in, I started doing house. When Lockin' and Poppin' finally made its way to New York, I started doing that. So it was never like, oh, I'm just gonna do this. It was just what was there. And then 9/11 happened, and my wife and I sat and we had to think about our family. We were like, what are we gonna do? At that time, Japan had been calling all of the New York street dancers since like 89, 90-ish. They were like, you know, we want all the street dancers. But it was never my thing. It was never like, oh, I want to go to Japan. It was just like, you know, if they want to learn this, they need to come here and learn it from. And my wife was like, well, why don't you go out there? And I was just like, well, you know, touring is not my thing. I'm not a tourer. I don't do the whole workshop type of thing. And she was like, well, you could think about teaching. You seem to be good at that. And I was just like, you mean people could actually learn about this culture from me? Oh, all right, we can do that. It sounded easy, and then when we got there, my mindset just wasn't right. So I got there with the New York mindset, like, anybody who's coming to learn this needs to learn this the New York way. I don't need to speak your language. You shouldn't have to speak my language. This is from New York. This is how we do it in New York. You should be able to pick this up. And I would come home at night and sit on the bed and go, they're not getting this. They're just not getting it. And she would look at me and go, that's because you don't speak Japanese. I don't need to speak Japanese. This is dance, this is music. They love hip-hop music. They really just didn't get it. And it was, I mean, there was a communication that needed to happen. And in me having to learn how to communicate that to them, I then had to start to study what I was doing. Like where it came from, how did I learn this stuff. Not even where it came from in general, but how I got it. Yeah. Started having to think about the things I heard around my house, the music my mom played, the people that I was around, the whole, I mean the entirety of it, all the way down to the food that I ate. You know, and we started, the more that I started to think about my childhood and the things that I had gone through, the more things started to, the pieces started to come together. And it became easier for me to translate the culture behind the street. And there were a lot of like moments where I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that I haven't even thought that way, but it is what it is for the time that it was. And
what's an example of that?
All right, there are rules to the street, right? And it's just like, how many of you have ever heard Biggie Small's The 10 Crack Commandments? You've heard the song, right? So when I heard that song the first time, I know everyone else, when they first hear that song, they're thinking about immediately drugs, right? I heard 10 Crack Commandments and I was thinking cracks in the sidewalk, like in the street. The 10 Crack Commandments, how things go down on the street, right? And one of the major things that we do in the street is whatever happens in the street stays in the street. We never ever talk about what goes on in the street. So we may hint at it. It may be part of a conversation, but it's never ever direct. Like, yo, last night this and this and this happened on this corner. It was like, it's more along the lines of, yo, you was there last night? Yeah, that was ill, right? Yeah, that was ill. And you know what I mean? Everybody understands because they were there. If you were not there, then you do not understand. Therefore, you're not part of that conversation. That directly relates to our dance. Yo, did you see what he did last night? Yo, that was hot. Yeah. There's never any explanation of what was happening because you were there. And if you were not there, you don't know. So now you have people who are at the club who were there. And they're like, yo, what was that step that you did last night? And then people are looking at him like, why would you even ask that question? You were there. You feel me? So it's more like, dude, we don't talk about the street like that. Why would you even ask that direct of a question? You know what I mean? And that it translates to a lot of things, not just in dance, but the street culture on the whole, like what we wear, what we say, how we act, a whole lot of things on that nature that people just don't understand because they're not from the street. So if you're not from the street, essentially in the street dance world at this time anyway, if you weren't from the street, then you just don't understand. And for us, that was okay. It was just like, we could see all the garbage that was going on TV and just be like, that's garbage, that's why they don't get it. But what we didn't understand was the rest of the world was looking at it and thinking, that's how it is. That's how the street is. And because we never ever talked about it, we never said anything, we never put down the crack commandments. We never said, these are what the 10 crack commandments are. This is what we do in the street. People just assumed that that's what it was, and that's it. And then when you come to us now and we're like, well, no, it's not like that. This is how it actually is. Then people are like, well, no, I saw so-and-so and so doing it, and this was doing it, and he's doing it, and that's doing it. And it's not that they don't know, and it's not that they're trying to belittle it, it's just that they don't understand the rules of the street. So in going through all of that, you know, I learned about myself through my culture. And it's always been a great thing for me because I've always felt like people just don't understand what the street is. So it was never like something I thought would be as big as it was. I just figured people just don't get it. Again, street mentality was just like, they just don't get it. I never thought that in order for them to really understand it, I have to teach it and explain it and break it down for them to really get an appreciation for it, and then they can figure out how they can use it in their lives, and so on and so forth. None of those thought patterns came to mind. It was just, you're in front of your son, so you just don't get it. You just don't get it. It's just like, you know, I look at a lot of the younger kids now, they are sneaker heads. I don't think they understand what that means, because they say like, oh, it's about getting exclusive kicks. No, that's not what being a sneakerhead is about. Being a sneakerhead is about getting exclusive kicks at a cheap price when no one else can get them. That is a sneakerhead. When you can look at them and be like, yo, son, look at these. I got these for $50. Yo, where you get those at? No, son. You know? That is a sneakerhead right there. Not, yeah, I went online and spent $500 for those shoes. Son, you crazy. Son, that's insanity right there. No one does that. It's about that search. It's about finding the information. It's about being able to have something exclusive that everybody else can look at and go, yo, he must have paid a lot for them. And you're just like, no. Y'all be $50. Yeah. Where you get those from? That's just how the street is, and learning things like that and being able to teach things like that help people to understand what this culture is about.
So, you know, I'm wondering, because like education really is kind of, if you think about it, general, taking something that people kind of understand without having to talking about it, and finding a way to translate it to people who don't have that direct access so they can learn about it. So, but do you feel like, is there anything lost in that process? I mean, is there, when it's kind of transferred in this way, that's kind of a language that's codified, that it's hard to really partake of it in the same way?
I don't think that there's ever going to be a way that we can transfer everything 100% to 100%. And that's another thing that I learned in learning Japanese. Because the way that they say things sometimes means more than the words that they say. You know, it's just like konnichiwa, ohayo gozaimasu, or irashai, all the greetings that they use. It depends on who's saying it and how it's being said and the level of which that person sees the respect of another person. There's a whole lot of things that get lost in ohayo gozaimasu versus ohayo gozaimasu versus ohayo gozaimasu. There's a whole lot of things that get lost in that people just don't think about. Right. We just see it as he's bowing. But that level of bow is different depending on who he's talking to. It's the same thing with street and teaching street. Certain things, depending on who you're talking to, is going to come off a different way. Because they have their life experience that they've lived, their whatever part of the culture they're representing, whether that be MCing, graffiti, b-boying, or dancing, whatever they're representing. They are attacking it from what they've experienced. So they may choose to not share certain things only because they feel like that part won't be understood unless you were there. Again, right. You know what I mean? So you're never going to get 100% street. I don't think y'all really want 100% street, to be totally honest with you. But there are some very important things that people can learn about themselves through street and street culture, mainly because it wasn't something that was ever supposed to be the way that it is. It was just, everyone thought of it as just another fad. Like, it's going to be here tomorrow, it's going to be gone, and that's it. It's just going to be done. And I can distinctly remember in 6th grade when I got selected to go to this special school for musically gifted and talented kids. I didn't get selected even for dance. It was for singing. And they were like, oh, see, we want you to go to this school. My mom was ecstatic. Oh, baby, stop. You know. But at this time, it was a new pilot program. So when you went to this school, you learned about the arts. So you had to sing, you had to play an instrument, you had to dance, you had to do what they called staging, which was about learning about all the stage, that type of stuff. And, you know, when they got down to the dance portion, I was like, I got this. I've been dancing already since whenever. So, you know, I went out and I did my thing. You know, what's my top rocks, and I'm spinning, and I stand up and the teacher looks at me and she goes, I don't know what that was, but don't ever do that here again. You know, and at that point I just chalked it up as, she's not from the street. She just don't get it. You know what I mean? And it wasn't anything like detrimental to me. I just knew at that point that people who weren't from the street just didn't understand it. I didn't think that I had to teach it. I just figured that they would never really get it because they weren't from the street. But then when I travel across the planet and I go to another country and there are these kids who don't have any way to express themselves. It's not that they have bad upbringing or they live in derelict or anything like that. They just, their culture doesn't see that kind of expression as something that's important. But these kids need a way to express themselves because they can't outwardly go out and just be like, ah, this is me. Their society isn't like that. But if they can find that through music, through dance, and at that time, the music and dance that spoke to them was what they consider black music. And you have this whole underground community of kids who go to school from 8:30, 9 o'clock, all the way until 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Then after that, go to whatever after-school sports or programs that they have, and then still go into a parking garage and dance from 12 midnight to 3 o'clock in the morning. Religiously, like, they had to do that. That was part of their routine. I'm just like, yo, this is crazy. Yo, they're out here, and I mean, it's not even like they're out there playing around like we were playing around, just playing around on the street. They're literally like going hard for 3 hours. 3 hours, that 3 o'clock mark comes and like, all right, gotta go home, I gotta go to sleep, I gotta go to work, I gotta go to school tomorrow, whatever, you know what I mean? And to see that level of dedication towards something that we just thought was just something that was gonna be a fad was just like, wow, this is serious. And they thought that's what we did. They thought that we were out practicing at that time an hour and doing all this. We practiced in our bedrooms, we did what we needed to do in our houses, but I don't think we were, again, thinking about the impact it was having anywhere else. We were just doing it because there was nothing else for us to do. And we heard, by the time we were 18, we'd either be dead or in jail.
Yeah.
That was...
No, I mean, another thing you're talking about that I'm really interested in is like, the way, because I mean, I know you guys and your whole generation of dancers and the technical proficiency you all have, right? And usually, like in ballet and other things, technical proficiency is seen as, no, you just concentrate on doing that one thing. You don't kind of go where your heart takes you. You make sure you're like, you might not feel like doing another ton do, but you're gonna do it. Right. And to see you guys kind of get this level of technicality from just kind of like, I'm just moving the way that, you know, how my body feels, what feels good, I'm playing around. So like, do you feel like that's another kind of aspect of this kind of thing of play, this kind of different type of training? I
mean, I guess that's what rubbed people the wrong way about what we did. Was because there were people who, like you said, spent many years doing the same thing. This is the way. This is the... For us, we didn't think that way fit us, so we found a way for what we did to work. Like, for us, being the same was what we considered whack. No one wanted to be like somebody else. Now, let me keep this in mind. If you ran with a certain bunch of people, maybe you all did things similarly because you ran together, but it still was a little bit different. Like, there is no way, for instance, Terry and Terry could exist in the street dance world. That just, one of us had to give that name up. It just wasn't going to be two Terrys. Now, you would have situations where people would get trained under other people, or people would hang with someone very much and they picked up their mannerisms, and then you became little Terry or little Cebo. But that's something that came through time. For us, being the same was anti anything that we were doing. Like, you had to bring something original to the table. So even if you learned a step from me, you had to add something to it to make it your own. And if you didn't, then you were going against. But, you know, that's just not what we do. It's not what street dance is about. It's not about everyone being the same. It's about everyone being together, but not being the same. I mean, and there's a difference there. Like, we could all do the same step, but it's much better if we did the same step our way together than everybody trying to do the same step the same. Because although we all grew up in the same places, we all grew up in different houses still. You know what I mean? So our understanding and the way that we do the dances are still attacked from different points of views. Even though we are around each other a lot and we danced with each other a lot, there's still a different point of view there. And I think in the earlier, before people understood what we were doing, everyone was trying to copy what it was. And so you had a lot of copiers or people who looked like, oh, this one looks like this and this one looks like that, because again, there was not that explanation of what the street rules were. You know, copying is forbidden. I mean, you have to add something to the step. But they just want to be able to do it the way they see you do it. Like, do it like you. Yeah, I get that, but you're not me. Let me see, you have to add your own flavor, nuance, something to it that when people look at it, they see you and not me. And that's what the street dance culture is about. It's about that individuality. So it's not really about having to do the same step for an extended period of time to get a level of proficiency, to be able to say, okay, you're gonna do, you know what I mean? Which is different than a lot of the other dance styles, and I'm just speaking specifically on dance right now just because we're on that, but in street dance culture, that being original is what helps people to be able to excel. Because now you understand, although there are parameters there, you understand the parameters well enough now that you can now add your own to it and move forward and push it and start to add different elements to it that I may not have thought about or somebody else may not have thought about and look at it and be like, oh, that's hot. The problem with that is, though, now you have so many people. We're at a dance party. There's a whole lot of different dancers there. A jazz dancer comes into the circle and she does something that was really cool that we saw was like, oh, that's hot. And we adopt that. Right? So now this jazz dancer is like, oh, cool. I can do jazz with this too. Her main pedigree is jazz. And she's doing mainly jazz. But she's doing it now to street music. So now it's like, okay, well, now I want to call it this. And since there is no guiding factor in that, she's free to do that. Yes? Doesn't hurt when it's just for fun. But then when you talk about it 10, 15 years down the line, she's now taught this person, who's now taught this person, who's now taught this person, who are now saying, this is the origin, this is the origin of this street dance step. And you're like, no, it isn't. That actually isn't from street at all. It's just something that was done at the club that people see. And again, when you start to blur those lines, the other dance forms get upset. They get very upset because they've spent a lot of years building this curriculum. You need to learn this first, learn this second, learn this third to be able to do this. And then you have this person who sidetracks all of that and goes straight to here, and then now it's like, and now, because they're calling it something else, and it's in another genre of dance per se, they don't necessarily have to deal with the ramifications of all of that. But this side is still like, how are you going to come out here, take my style, run with it, and now not pay homage to where it comes from?
So that's similar. So that's so you're kind of talking about being there, right? You know, just kind of like on one extreme you have the being there, like if I have to explain this at all to you, then you weren't there. And,
exactly.
You know, but that makes it very insular, right? But then, so now we're trying to ways to bleed out. But if you let it bleed out too much, then you have people who just kind of dipped out, and say I was there, right. So, like in your mind, then like who has, especially as we talk about like trying to get education about hip hop outside of that circle, who has the authority to speak on it? I mean, who has the authority, or how do you determine who has the authority to be able to kind of represent that well?
I mean, I think that's where we are right now. I would say, in my opinion, the authorities who have the say in this are the people who have been doing it consistently since the beginning. And I know that might rub people the wrong way because there are some people who were doing it for a long period of time and then stopped. And then it became hot again and then they jumped back in. You know what I mean? The problem with that is that time span that you stopped, things kept going. So you're not aware of what was going on there. You know what I mean? And then those of us who hung in, who kept doing it the entire time, are now feeling like, well, where'd you go? When you took your break, I was still here. You know what I mean? When things got hard and you felt like you couldn't do this anymore, you bounced. I stayed. I ran through the course, and now that things are on the up, you're back in. And people feel a certain way about that. The authorities lie in the people who are consistent. And it should always be that way. It should lie in the people who are consistent, the people who were there at the beginning, and will continue on till now. I'm not saying that you shouldn't listen to people who stop and go, but you have to take the good with the bad with that, though. There's certain things that they're not going to know because they weren't there. They weren't around. They weren't a part of that. Street dance being the newest dance style, there are a lot of things that we had to learn. And that's one of the things that we had to learn, is that there needs to be a governing factor behind our style. If not, anyone can take it and run with it. And at the beginning, we didn't think that. We thought it should be open to everybody. Everybody should be able to do it. And it was, and that was the mindset then, and it should have been then. That was the only way that we would have been able to perpetuate all those dances and come up with party dances, to be able to say, okay, this is the foundation. Because if not, if we would have started at that point like, okay, we are a group, we're the governing factors, these are the steps, then it would have never gone past those individuals. It would have been just those 4 or 5 steps, and then it would have definitely died. You know what I mean? It needed to be free first, and then now we need to bring it back, reel it in, organize it, and then we did something a little bit backwards. Normally the saying goes, you first have to be selfish before you can be selfless. Right? We were selfless first. Right? We were just like, all right, here, everybody take it, go, run with it. With the thinking that they're going to come back to us and be like, oh yeah, I got this from C, I got this from this, and I got that from that. But then when they're just like on the red carpet and like, we love your style, where'd you get it from? Yeah, I learned it on my own, I was in my bedroom. And everybody's just like, son, no, you didn't just say that. You know what I mean? But now that it's out there and people want to do it, now we can be a little bit selfish and be like, okay, let's sit down at the table, all of us, figure out what this is, quantify it, and then say, okay, this is where we started. This is how we started. This is how it began. These are the people that we taught. These are the things that happened. These are the reasons why things are the way that they are. We have to take responsibility, one, for a lot of the things that we did because we were young. You know what I mean? A $5,000 check in 1982. It's like $1 million check. Just let you know that right now. That's a lot of stuff you could buy. So when you're getting money like that at a young age, you're just like, this is going to last forever. I'm going to be rich forever. And, you know, you tend to start making foolish mistakes based on that. Like, not showing up for this, not doing that, not doing this, not doing that, because you feel like you don't need to because it's going to last forever. Or, in our mindset, it didn't seem like it was going to last as long anyway. It was just because we were just being told, oh, this is just a fad. This is just going to end, and blah, 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 blah. And being young, we're just like, all right, well, then I'm going to take this for as long as I can take it. As you continually do it, and as you're doing it, and as you start to have kids, and you see them doing it, and you're seeing kids around your way start to pick up on things, and you're just like, oh, people are actually into this. All right. So then you start doing things that you never did before, like people come to you in a club. This is like a big no-no in New York. If you walked up to somebody in a club and be like, yo, show me that step. That's the easiest way to get walked away from. Like, psst, and just walk away. So once you start to realize that people are interested in it, you start to actually start answering those questions. Yo, show me how to do that step. All right, it goes like this. You don't think about it for now, you walk away, they go home, they're taking that down. One of the best dancers of the younger generations now, Cricket, he would come all the way up to New York from Philly with a book and sit in the club and be like, yo, what's the name of this step? Yo, what's that? What's that? And everybody would be like, yo, Cricket is on some craziness right now. But he would go back and study and study and study. I mean, that's just how he did. That was his thing. He studied, you know what I mean? And you can tell. You look at him now, he's like, he's crisp. Everything he does is sharp because he studied it. Where for us, that flipping that switch was not that easy. Like walking into something and being able to just do it the same way every time is something we had to learn. Because we were so used to just freestyling. Like, yo, just let me do my thing. Just put the music on and I bust it. But then the director was like, no, we want you to do that
thing you did
last time again. And we're just like, that thing. What? I don't know what that is. What are you talking about? Nah, last time you did that, the thingy thing. You know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? So having to be able to do things over and over and over and over and over was something that we had to learn. And if you were in New York in the early 80s, 90s, that's how the lessons were. Like you would walk into a class and it was just like, you have to follow this. You just have to follow it. I mean, you could ask a question. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get answered, but I mean, you could ask it like, could you do that again? I just did it. You know what I mean? I just did it. You just got to pick it up and run with it. And watching some of the people, when I first went to Faisal's studio in New York and saw Marge and Brian and Ejo actually breaking down steps, I was like mesmerized. Like, yo, you just did that step twice. How do you do that? I mean, it was just like, you mean he actually has the facilities to do this at he could do that step at any time? Whoa. Because for us, it was just like everything was guided by the music.
What year was it?
First time I was in Faisal's was 92?
So that was like the first time you saw someone who actually kind of like
break down steps, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there were always the community classes, the community things where you teach after school and all that kind of stuff. Those have happened forever. But it wasn't like teaching. It was just like people would come in, see you dancing, and try to copy what you did. You know what I mean? It wasn't necessarily like a lesson until that point. Well, for me anyway, until that point. When I saw that, then I was like, whoa, yo, I need to, teach this. And that's when it started becoming a conscious thing for me to think about the steps that I was doing, what drives the steps. Because it was always music for me. Music first, like however the music was, that's how I moved. Like, yo, that's my song. And you could tell when it wasn't my song because I wasn't dancing. It was just like, nah, I don't dance to this song. But this is hot. Yeah, to you, but not to me. This is not. You know what I mean? And those were my breaks. So when I was at the club, if he played 10 hot songs that I liked, I danced for those 10 songs straight. The minute that one song came on that I didn't like, it was like, oh, what a break. Not messing with this. You know what I mean? I'm in the bathroom, drink my water, back. You know what I mean? And back on the dance floor until something else hot comes on. It wasn't about the steps, it was always about the music first. And the first time I realized that when I got to the studio that there were steps to it, it was just like mind blown. Like literally mind blown.
Yeah, that's the switch.
Yeah, that was, that switch from Cebo being a dancer to Cebo being a teacher to understanding this culture. The first switch, I guess. I guess that second switch was when I got to Japan and actually saw the culture being absorbed in a totally different light. Like you go there and it's like 1990s all over again. Everybody's wearing cross colors and they've got Carl Kanai and Feli and Adidas, and it's just like, yo, this is what's up right here. I can deal with this. But they have absolutely no idea why they were here. They just feel, they've realized that the beginning of that genre, this is what was born and this is what you listen to, so that's what they did. Like they may not know any English words, but they know a good hip hop song. I don't understand how that works. Like, how can you not speak English but know a common song like, yo, that's hot? You know what he's saying? But I know that that song is a good song. How do you know that song was a good song? Because I saw Stretch and Link dance to that song in this video. You know, so now it starts to click how they're making the translations between music and movement and what's good and what's not good. Oh, I heard this song in a workshop that was done by this person at this time, and I've been trying to find it ever since. So, I mean, once I started to realize that it needed to be taught, it needed to be some sort of way of teaching it, that was my mindset was, how can I teach this and still maintain that integrity? So it's always been music first. For me anyway, music first. Like I never walk into any kind of teaching situation thinking, I'm gonna actually teach them some steps. I walk into it thinking, I might get them to listen to some good music today. And hopefully somebody in there hears a song that they like and is inspired to move to it. I remember when Cebo came to Santa Barbara, he played this song right here. I'd never heard that before. And now it's one of my favorite songs. You know what I mean? Those types of things is what will help you to understand music and then be able to move to it. Because now you're driven by music and feeling and not just movement. You know what I mean? Yeah. So now you're like, yo, I remember that feel when he first came and said, I need to move like this. I didn't understand what it was then, but now it makes complete sense that I've gone on and done this and done that and moved here and lived there and lived my life through this culture. Now I can understand it, and now you can pass that down, and you know what I mean? And now the culture starts to perpetuate.
That's good. I want to leave time to open questions from you guys. If you have particular things that you want to ask about.
Don't be asking me crazy. If he wasn't there, he was there.
So you learned to speak Japanese and teach a little bit?
Okay, let me clarify that.
Yeah, I'm a little confused on that.
I didn't learn to speak Japanese. I didn't really have a choice in that. See, learning requires you to actually go, yeah, I'm going to actually study this. I was just in a situation where I could not speak English at all. And all they spoke was Japanese. So I started picking up things that I could use to teach my class. Things like that I could just say left, right, stand up, sit down. And as the time went on, the phrases became longer and longer and longer. Longer and longer and longer. You know what I mean? And so it wasn't like, oh, I'm trying to learn Japanese. I was never, ever trying to learn Japanese.
That's so interesting because that fits so well with the whole kind of way of learning dance.
Yes, right.
Right.
You learn those phrases and that they just become longer and longer. Exactly.
With that being said, would you say you're fluent now?
I'm sorry?
With that being said, would you say that you're fluent now in Japanese?
That's not a question I can answer. Would you say I'm fluent in Japanese, Jim? Oh, okay. Let's ask the expert. My dear, would you say I'm fluent in Japanese? No. That answers that question. Let's put it this way. I would never ever be lost in Japan, though. You know what I mean?
Conversational.
I could definitely get around. I can get anything that I needed done in Japan.
He's
That
good, but he's not fluent. But he's good.
I wouldn't even put it as good. I can just do what I need to do in Japan. I mean, I didn't realize that I was good at Japanese until like I got to an event and they asked me to judge in Japan. Normally when I go to the event, there's a translator there who translates for me. So I get to this one event and I'm sitting down and it's me and a bunch of other Japanese judges and I'm like, and you know, they're asking the judge comment, and as they're asking the judge comment, they're passing the mic down. I'm always at the end and the mic's coming down and I'm like, this mic is coming my way. I don't see a translator nowhere. And the mic lands in front of me. Boom. Cebo. Kyo donata? And I'm like, and that's how it began. I just tried to say whatever I could say, make light of the situation. Like, you know, the Japanese you're about to hear is not going to be as good as theirs, but I'll try my best and make my point as best as I possibly can. And then from that moment on, there was never ever a translator again. I was just like, seriously? So I got slick on him and started bringing my wife. And I would call her up to the stage and be like, dear. She was like, you can speak Japanese, go ahead. I'm just like, oh. So again, it was never anything that I was trying to do purposely. It just happened to fall in my lap and I didn't have any choice in the matter whatsoever.
Was there a difference between like the Japanese and American like flavors that were brought to street dancing?
Oh yeah. I mean, you can see it now. You can Google it if you want. You look at any of the way the street dance world works right now, America will probably always be on top of that. Mainly because they understand the music, they have more feeling. Technically, Japanese are the best at street dance. Technically. You can look at them and their technicality is spot on. But because they don't speak any English, that feeling, that one little feel, that little nuance, that little of the head that you need on that step is not there. And it's always like second place or third place. And sometimes it hurts my heart to have to go, because I know that if they had that, it would definitely put them on it, but they just, that lost in translation thing is. So I mean, they have absorbed as much of the culture as they possibly can in terms of how they dress, the music we listen to, what we wear, how we wear our hair. I mean, they have it all down, but they just don't have that, they don't speak enough English to be able to pull it. Now, France, on the other hand, speaks English really well, and they have their own French way of saying everything, you know. So the French way is very, they have a lot more feel to their dance, and their feeling is great, but they're not as technically sound as the Asian countries. You know what I mean? So they always come in second or first place, depending on if America's in the house. That's just how that runs. So I mean, you can definitely, and everywhere has a different spin on how they do street dance, everywhere. You look at how South Americans do it, you look at how now South Africa has jumped in the game, how South Africa does it. I mean, you'll see a lot, they do a lot of the things that we do, but they still have their own spin on it. And it's just like, again, that's that individuality that they have to bring to it in order to perpetuate it. If not, nobody wants to see it. It's just like, you're just doing what everybody else does.
So you said it kind of had to do with when you went to, or when you kind of had that revelation in '92 when you started to break down the steps.
Right.
I taught them, and then that's kind of what that was around the time where you started to become familiar with yourself as a teacher, like as like transforming from just a dancer.
Yeah, definitely. Because at that moment, I had never thought about teaching.
How old were you at that time? Yeah.
16, going on 17.
Yeah. So I don't know. I was kind of wondering. So I'm assuming you were still young at that time, and and I don't know if you still are like. Are you still related to battling, and like as of now? Is that something you still have to do?
I mean, as long as you're in street dance, as long as somebody calls you out, you don't have a choice in that matter. I mean, somebody say, yo, I don't like the way you dance, that's whack. You can either take that on the chin and be like, yeah, okay, you don't like the way I dance. Or you can stand up and be like, all right, let's go. Let me see what you got. I mean, that's one of the things about street dance that will never ever change. I don't care how good you got and how high you get up on the totem pole, people are always going to come for you. They're going to always come for me. once you get to a certain level, they're going to come for you out of respect. They're just going to be like, you know, it's always been a dream of mine to dance against you kind of situation. And in that situation, win or lose, you're on top. But until you get to that level, it's always going to be, yo, I want to see where you at. I'm trying to get to that level too. Because the only way to get to the A bracket in street dance is through battle. You know what I mean?
I actually asked that question because I was like, once you do get that mentality as a teacher, I feel like, I'm just starting to teach, and I feel like I'm still like really like young, and I don't really have like the mentality to want to, or the qualifications to like pass on anything. But I feel like when I start to invest in teaching more, it's going to be, I'm going to have to start to balance out like being like prioritizing improving on my own.
All right.
You know what I'm talking about?
If you're now that street dance has moved into the realm of studio and teaching, yes. Now we're shifting to Cebo, the studio owner, right? So when I'm looking for teachers who teach at my studio, I have 12 teachers that teach at my studio. In Okayama, I would say there are probably about 24 people who are, I would say, good enough to teach street dance, right? Being able to teach something and pass down information is all about always wanting to make yourself better. It's not necessarily about just handing off information. It's about learning. You're learning to teach, you know what I mean? So when you're in a classroom, you're teaching something, but you're learning something as you're teaching at the same time, because you may not have thought about it a certain way until that person asks you a question. So then you have to think about it, and you're just like, oh yeah, well, maybe you could do it that way. I never thought about it that way before. But when you're at your house and you're practicing on your own, you're not thinking about that. You know what I mean? That's not the thought that's going through your mind. You're trying to come up with new things. Nothing's really coming to you. You're like, and you may come up with something, you may not come up with something, but being in the teaching realm does not negate anything else. You still have to become good and proficient at what you are as a dancer. You know what I mean? And just because you get to a certain level does not mean that it stops either. You have to continue. Like, I will probably be battling forever. Because I still get phone calls to Cebo, can you be the guest battler? Even though I show up and all of the people there are like, are you judging? I'm like, no, I'm into it. You know, they get that. And I'm like, dude, if you say to me, am I judging, and I say, no, I'm battling, and you give me the terrified look, that means that you're going to lose already. That means that you don't have the confidence to do this. If I walked into a battle and I saw Stretch there, and I'm like, yo, Stretch, you going to judge? He's like, nah, I'm battling. And I'm entering, I'm like, I know what I need to do. I need to bring out the A bag. The Stretch is in this, let's go. We going. We're going to go 1,000 rounds today. I'm going to try my best to win this battle. Not, you know what I mean? Street dance has always been about trying to be the best that you could possibly be. And we give you every opportunity to do that. No one shies away from a battle. Everyone is just like, all right, you want to do this? Let's do this. You may get your feelings hurt. I'm going to be totally honest with you. There's one of two things that's going to happen. You're either going to get better or you're going to quit. That's the only two options you have in this. You're either going to get better or you're going to move on to something else. Like, all right, you know what? Maybe this is not for me. And in which case, you win-win. You find something that you're actually good at and you do that. Because we always need doctors, we always need lawyers, we always need, I mean, this dance thing is not for everybody. But I can tell you this though, I do need a good dancing accountant, and a good dancing lawyer, and a good dancing doctor, because I'm getting tired of, I walk in and I sit down and I'm like, my shoulder hurts. Oh, what do? I'm a dancer. Well, I think you need to stop dancing. you do realize that this is my profession. You're just like telling me to quit my life for the next 3 weeks. There has to be something that you can do. Or I sit down at the accountant's office and I got a box full of receipts. You guys gotta understand, dance is it's a cash thing. Everybody walks in, they're paying for classes with cash, and you know, VMO, all that stuff that still hasn't trickled down to the dance world. So I'm walking into the accountant's office, I'm like, all right, I need to do my taxes for the year. I got a box full of receipts, and he's just like, so what's this cash thing for? Oh yeah, I won a battle. And they paid you $5,000 in cash? Yeah. He's looking at me like, yeah, it's a simple yes or no question for me. Yes, I won $5,000. But for him, it's like, that sounds like a lot of money in cash that somebody's walking around with. I was like, well, if it sounds funny to you, you should see what it looks like at the end of the battle. I gotta walk down this dark corridor. You know, there's a guy standing at the door, he knocks, they open the door, I walk in, there's a lady there, she's counting out cash. Trust me, it don't feel good to me. You know what I mean? It does not feel good to me either, but this is what I do. It's a cash business. That's what they, you know, how they pay people. I'm not hiding anything, this is what I do. So I need an accountant who's going to be able to understand that world. And not look at me like, you sure you're not standing on the corner?
How many kind of accounting major?
Yeah, well, dude, we're going to have to talk. We're going to have to talk.
I have a question.
Okay.
Yes. So, in high, like, particularly at this school, it's
Right.
ballet modern,
Okay.
and you speak about the music, and I understand the relationship with music as far as it comes with dance, because me personally, I'm moved by the music
Right.
and connecting to it. But how would you describe it in a way for those who don't necessarily believe you have to dance to music?
Yeah.
So how would you describe that feeling and that the importance of dancing because it's moving you? How would you describe it to a system that doesn't necessarily agree with dancing to music all the time?
Okay, it's gonna sound real crass, but as a street dance, we really don't pay much attention to what people think should and shouldn't happen. We can only do what we do. If you feel like you don't need to dance to music, that's fine with us. You don't have to do street dance. Nobody's telling you you need to do street dance. But if you are going to do street dance, and if that is what you are going to do, and if you feel like that's something that you want to do, there are things that you need to know. And one of those things, and it's a really important thing, is that you need to listen to the music. It drives every aspect of our culture. Everything street related comes from the music. From how we write our names, to the nicknames that we get, to it is all very much street related, because for us, the message is in the music. You know what I mean? It's not so much that we are trying to just explain us as individuals. We're trying to explain us as a group, as a community. This is what the community feels like. You know what I mean? This is what it feels like to be a part of that community. And to be a part of that community means that you are listening to the music, you're moving with us your way. If you are not listening to the music, then you're not moving with us. You might be moving your way, but you're not moving with us your way. You are now standing outside doing it your way, which is fine. But it's not what we do in street dance. Moving to music is what it's all we have. It's all we've ever had. We can't lay ownership to anything. I mean, it sounds weird, but nothing. We lay ownership to nothing. We didn't own the homes that we lived in. You know, the streets that we lived on weren't named after us. The jobs that we went to weren't owned by us. We didn't own anything. The only thing that we could own was the way this music made us feel as a community. Right? So we would come together as a community. And I'm not just saying this as a black community or a Spanish community. I'm talking about whoever was in that community. Because believe it or not, there were actually white people in the hood too. You know what I mean? And, you know, behind every single thing that happened in hip hop, there has always been that underlying message of diversity. We've never been like, yo, this is an all black thing, y'all can't do this. It's always been, yo, let's all do this together. Let's move as a community together. But if you're not going to abide by the parameters that are set by that community, then you're not a part of that community. Yes? Nothing wrong with that, but you just need to know that. But you can't belittle my community just because you have your own community or you think your community should strive a certain way. If that's the way you want yours to go, you're free to it. But this is the way that ours should go. And everything helps everything else. I'm sorry to say, biodiversity is how it is. You know what I mean? Everything helps everything else. Sometimes you have to step out of your community, learn something else, go back to your community and go, yo, this is what I learned. And it's based off of this that I learned here in this community. Word? Word. So we can rock with that? Yeah, we can rock with that. And that's how the community now starts to grow. You know what I mean? So again, I'm not going to sit here and tell anybody what they should or should not be doing. You don't want to listen to music? Rock with that. But I know if you're going to come into our world, if you're going to come into this street dance world, you have to have a keen ear for what you hear around you. No music.
Hey.
No music. Even with no music, there is music for us. You know what I mean? Even with no music, there is music for us. We have always, everything has some sort of a vibe or a groove for us, and that's what drives it every single time. So I can't sit here and be like, oh, well, maybe they should do this or maybe they should do that. I don't know what they should do. I know what we do. And that's all. And I mean, it doesn't make you any less or any better. It just makes you you.
So, you know, I kind of it's kind of inside outside thing that we're talking about for people who want to enter in.
Right.
I mean, that takes a lot on the person coming in, right? To have that level of curiosity to say, I want to know what this is about,
right,
to participate in it.
Right.
But for those of us who are kind of felt like we spent some time in,
right,
and are now trying to bring it out,
right,
and the powers that be in trying to illustrate that in a way where there's not that kind of latent curiosity, where there's something you kind of have to foster. You know, I mean, especially when there's this kind of, oh, that hip hop stuff is cute, you know, you have fun, you have a good time. It's like, that's nice that you get to move around and do what you feel for a little bit while you're not doing something serious. You know, what are the strategies that you can kind of,
you know, for me, it's all about relating. People who don't understand things can't relate to it. You know what I mean? So you have to find something that they can relate to. And for me, it has always been music. Because even though, let's say they don't feel like they need to dance to music, they listen to music at some point. And so my argument is always, well, yeah, you don't necessarily, you may have an inner metronome that you can use to dance to, but this song already has a message that relates to you in some personal way. Specifically, let's say your mom passed and this song came on, yes? So now this song has a significant memory value to you, right? You come across someone else who has a significant memory value of the same exact song. Now you guys have a common language that you can speak. Yes? And that is how people connect. Now you may have totally different views of the world, but that one thing is what brings you together. So now you can open your mind to other things because you have a common goal. And that's what I've always used to try to bridge that gap, is try to open people to the idea of music through not moving to music but just listening to it. You know, I like this song, you like that song. You like that song, I like this song. Oh, what? What? Oh. You know what I mean? And then the conversation can happen. And then we can start to talk about our differences and work through our differences. Trying to introduce somebody or introduce something that is completely foreign to them it's always going to be an uphill battle and a struggle. Yes, but you have to find that common ground, whatever that common ground is. For dance, that just happens to be music. It can also be movement, but the thing about that's kind of productive with that is then you have that ongoing battle of, but that move came from this and this move came from that, and this move came from this and this move came from that. So you're not really getting anywhere, you're just fighting each other or battling each other as to who has ownership of what. Not necessarily, let's agree that this step exists in both and try and find a way to bring both of our communities together and push forward. Because there's obviously things that you could learn from this community and our community can learn from you. And if we could find that common goal, then things could really get interesting. Once we get to that point where we can understand that there are things that both communities can learn from each other, then things will get really nice. Then things will get really nice. Because right now, you'll hear fusion this and fusion that, but it really isn't fusion. It's like you have a ballet dancer and a hip-hop dancer, and they're dancing together. It's not necessarily fusion, that's just two people then doing what they do well together. Fusion is when you sit down and you actually try to create something out of the two. That is fusion. That conversation I've never had yet or heard of, like Barishnikov sitting around with Stretch, like, all right. Okay, so this is what we're gonna do. This is how we're gonna do this. I'm gonna do this step and you're gonna do this step and then we're gonna try and come out with the. If we can have those kinds of conversations, oh man, the things that we could do. The things that we could do, because I know that there are parameters that are set on both dance styles that could definitely be lifted and then shifted, and it'd be like, oh, maybe now we need a 13th position. Hey, I'm all game for that. You know, I'm all game for that. So again, it's always going to be an uphill battle, but you have to find that common ground. And that's going to be the hardest part, is finding that common ground. It's going to be different for everybody, and it's going to be hard. Sometimes it's going to be easy. Sometimes you're just going to have to agree to disagree. Right.
So, I was wondering if you did keep in touch with the breaking scene and the street dance scene. Do you know, can you tell us like the differences? Or like the relationship between the communities that you see?
Here's the thing that bugs me out about that is like how, like all of a sudden, well not all of a sudden, but throughout time, now the street dance scene has become separated, where it's the breakers and the hip hop and the house and the lockers. The only thing that was different for us back then was the music. If they played a break beat, we broke. If they played a funk song, we popped or we locked. If they played a hip hop song, we did hip hop. But you weren't necessarily chained to that. Like, if you were at a party and they put on a break beat and you did hip hop to it and you got busy to it, you got busy to it. That didn't mean you were a b-boy. It just meant you got busy to the song. Yes? Now it's become so separated where The B-boys don't even go to hip-hop events. Like, if it's not a B-boy event, and that's just not B-boys alone, that's hip-hoppers, houses, hip-hoppers. In our, what was once a community where we're all moving together differently has now sectioned off to, I don't deal with that, and I don't deal with this, and I don't do that, and I don't do this. Granted, there are always dancers who are better at some styles than others. But every single top dancer in that style that you talk to will always say they're a dancer first. You play whatever you want to play, I'm about to get busy tonight.
Instead of like calling themselves a
Breaker or a locker or a popper, you know what I mean? And that's what we've always been fighting for from the beginning. You know what I mean? We wanted to be accepted in the dance world. You know what I mean? It was just like, oh, you street dancers, you guys don't, it's not really dancing. It's not really dancing. You guys are just fucking around, you're doing this, you're doing that, you know what I mean? And we've been fighting for that seat at the table, like, okay, we are now a dance that has a different set of styles in it. But what has happened is those styles have now become so strong, they have all broken off, so now you have this that only deals with that, and that only deals with this, and it's that inner fighting thing going on. So now the community is breaking down within itself instead of trying to split out. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of things that go along with that. It's not completely the community's fault. It's a lack of leadership. It's a lack of communication from top to bottom. You know what I mean? And all those things play a great part in things being able to proceed and grow. If you don't have that, then it's anarchy. Anything can happen. Anything goes. You know what I mean? And then you have people who become super strong at certain things, and they are strong with their ideals, and then they start to mold minds. You know what I mean? So now, instead of people studying dance, they're studying in theology. Oh, I need to think this way. This is the way that he said that I need to think, and I need to be this way. And it's counter to the street rules of being an individual, bringing your own to this. You know what I mean? So now you have a whole bunch of people all thinking the same. That's that Hitler stuff right there.
You know, I wanted to ask you about that real quick too, just to, and then maybe because I know you have another class coming up at 6:30 too. We're almost.
Do I? Okay.
Don't you? Did I get that
I do.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
But you know, even within like hip hop, you know, whatever you want to do to section that out. I mean, there was so many like, you know, Queens had something going on. I mean, Harlem, you know, like nobody even knows about Albee anymore. I mean, you know, all this. So like, and I was thinking before about how you were talking about, you know, those people who had that longevity,
Right.
and that kind of consistency from then to now. But there's all those other styles that informed so much that kind of didn't have those. You know, the founders died out, or like, you know,
See, that's the thing. I don't think anybody who's been true to this, they didn't die out. They kept doing what they were doing. Like they kept doing it. Whether they were known or not known didn't matter to them. Like it doesn't matter to me. Whether or not people know my name or know what I do, I could care less. But that this goes on is what's most important to me. That my kids can look back and say, my grandfather helped perpetuate that. You know what I mean? So we need to have those people who are going to have that long. And yeah, there are certain people who aren't remembered. And the reason why they aren't remembered is because they went through that phase where it became whack and they just didn't want to do it anymore. You know what I mean? You always have what's popular going on. Whatever is popular is what everybody's going to jump on.
Yeah.
Whatever is hot right now, that's what everybody's going to jump on. Regardless of whether, and when it dies, and when that goes on to something else, you either jump on that or you stop doing it. So it's very few people who have solid morals and solid standings that can go the entire road and be like, I can last through whatever comes through, because I know the next thing they're going to need somebody who can do this. So I mean, it's really not that difficult. In street dance and the street in general, pretty frank about a lot of stuff. Like, yo, you wasn't there, you wasn't there. You were there, you were there. You stopped, you stopped. Whether or not you were good is of no consequence because you stopped. So now you have a whole bunch of people who probably stopped with you. Because we all ran with people who, you know, were with us and danced with us and stuff, who looked up to us. So if you stop, they now have nobody to look up to. Or they shifted their train of thought to something else, which is not a bad thing. Because like I said, you know, we need some accountants and lawyers and doctors. So maybe they shifted their mind to something else too. But now that you're back, that time span that you were gone, things have happened. So who the higher ups should be, I can't really say. I do know that it definitely needs to be people who are strong in all styles and having open minds towards all styles, who are very much in depth in the community of street dance, but still open to street dance being included in dance on a whole. Because there are some people who just feel like, bless you, like street dance should just be its own thing. But I think that negates the whole purpose of dance. And I mean, we need to have all those branches of the tree so that this tree can stand strong. And I mean, I think right now the mindset is just like, yeah, we're going to plant our own tree. Dude, you know how many years you need for a tree to have a solid trunk to be able to hold up leaves? I'm saying, you know, there's certain things that we just have to realize is counterproductive to what we want to do. Could we do it? Yes. Do we have the time to necessarily do it? Do we have the manpower and resources? And to be totally honest with you, the fortitude for it, because it takes a lot. You know what I mean? To stand out on your own and just be like, look, we are not messing with none of y'all. That takes a lot.
That's so sad.
It's very lonely. It's a lonely road. It's a lonely road.
Well, thank you so much. I think everybody can agree this has been amazing. I want to give you a little time to transition before 6:30, so let's just give a round of applause.
Again, all the points made are from my point of view only. Yes, they're not set in stone, they're not gold, they're just the way I think about it. You have someone else sit in this chair, they're going to have a totally different view from their time frame in this. Everybody's views are valid. You know what I mean? It's just like, for us, being on the corner is a corner. You know what I mean? And everybody's looking at that corner from different views. You got people in the projects looking at it from down there. You got the guy in the store looking at it from this way. You got people who are actually on the corner. And everybody's story is going to be different of what they see on that corner.
8 million stories.
You know it. But all those stories make that corner. You know what I mean? So it's not one story is more prevalent than the other. All of them make that story. If not, then again, you have everybody thinking exactly the same.
Yeah. Back to community.
Back to community. You know it all, but that's all a circle. It's all a circle. All right, so how many of y'all jumping in the 6:30 class? Yes, let's get it. Yes, let's get it. That's what I like to see.